should be live. Great. Okay, what are we doing today? Hold on, let me get this chat popped out. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is use LLMs to help me generate data sets. I think this is a very important, useful tool if you're building LLM systems to help you evaluate quality, to help you train your systems. There's a million different application areas to build and improve upon your RAG system. All of those. And the trick is to use LLMs in smart ways. You can use them to judge answers. You can use them to generate question-answer pairs given context. That's what we're actually going to do today. You can use them to summarize your information and put that into your RAG system to maybe make more meaningful chunks. Lots of cool options. And I would like to play around with this. This was an impromptu idea, so I don't have this all planned out. It's going to be a live coding session, basically. If you have questions, comments, feel free to drop them in. Otherwise, just hang out. Okay. New notebook. I'm going to call this QA generation BOC. Okay. Let me write down a little bit of a plan here. So purpose. To use LLMs for generating question-answer pairs given a piece of context information. This will then be used to evaluate my RAG system. So if you're not aware, I have an online course right now that I'm developing where I'm building a RAG system. One of the tasks, there's lots of things we want to try, and we don't have a data set for evaluating it, right? We have this document corpus that we used to build our RAG system, but if we want to, swap out one embedding model for another, let's say, it would be nice to have a systematic way to evaluate the quality of certain choices. And without a well-labeled data set, it's hard to do that. And that's what this task is going to start making progress on, is getting a well-labeled data set so we can start evaluating our system. Okay, so the plan. We will start by, let's say, retrieving a chunk from our corpus. Inject this chunk into a prompt which asks an LLM construct QA pairs following a specified format. Run this generate a data set of QA pairs. Okay. So we're going to load our vector database that was previously constructed, take a chunk, throw it into a prompt that we haven't yet constructed, but we will. We'll ask it to generate these pairs. We'll sanity check it first, make sure we're getting what we want, and then we can scale this up and start randomly sampling chunks. So this will be the easiest version, right? Where you can directly answer a given question with a single chunk. It becomes significantly more difficult when you need multiple chunks from your corpus to answer a question, because your retrieval has to be good enough to get multiple relevant chunks, which can be hard with, these document embeddings. So I'm very curious how things will perform once we get to that level of complexity. But first thing is first, which is the simplest case. Okay. So I have this app that loads my vector database that I've already populated. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this function. I have to import these various things. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to need all of this. Go ahead and grab these things. Okay. Let's see. I'll go ahead and grab this too. It's just sitting there, so I may as well. Okay. So I think, I'm going to use default arguments. That's what I use to construct the data vector database. All this should be good. Okay. Now I think I can do something like the table has pandas, 2 pandas. I forget what this method is. Yeah, okay. So these are my chunks. Although to get the full table, there's, let's see, some silly hack I have to do here. Yeah, this thing. Hey, I will just grab this function. Okay, there we go. So there's some silly edge case where it only returns a limit of 10 unless you do this head, the total number of rows, and then 2 pandas. Okay, so now I have the whole thing. Maybe to get started, I'll take a chunk, because a lot of these chunks are nonsense, which eventually it would be nice to use an LLM to maybe judge the information quality of these various chunks so I can throw things away that are pointless. Or maybe there's some like simple statistical measures. But for now, maybe I will use the metadata to just find a chunk that I know has interesting content. Whoops. Not index. There, llama index. So the data we're using is the llama index documentation. So if I look at index.markdown, for example, you could imagine grabbing one of these chunks and constructing question answer pairs for them. What happens if I just grab one? All right, well, let me make sure this is deterministic. Okay. The only thing throwing me is this says deprecated. Okay. I'm going to hack around until I find a suitable example to test my prompt development. That's pretty good. If you aren't using OpenAI or want to use, okay. That's pretty good too. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah, see, most of these chunks are just nonsense. I think I'm going to use this. Okay. Okay, generate QA prompt. You are an expert at generating question answer pairs. Given an input context. Let's see here. Given this documentation, context, generate 3 question answer mimic realistic okay. No, that's the opposite of what I want. The questions should be directly answerable from the documentation. format your response as a JSON array with the following structure. Well, let's see what happens here. Let's see. Let me get a llama going. Where is it? Already got that. Yeah. I'm just going to use Llama 3.1. Let's take a quick look at the input. Invalid format specifier. What'd I do? It seems like it doesn't like these brackets here. Let's see. By doubling them, okay. Whoops. Seems to have worked. Oh, it's probably not needed, but okay. Let's see what we get. Oh, it's taking quite a bit of... Oh, well, I forgot. It has to start Olama and load the model. Okay. So let's remind ourselves of the chunk we have here. Okay, it's about custom installation. How do I install Llama and Hugging Face embeddings? Okay, I'm not sure this is correct. I mean, that part is correct, but it doesn't need to install these things. So in that sense, I don't love it. So this is talking about installing both Olama and the Hugging Face. Okay. All right, that's not very good. All right, let's add to our I'm gonna remove this. I'm going to try to invoke a little bit of chain of thought here. All right, I'll put the question, the metadata, then the answer. So clear, specific question about the context. Oops. All right, let's see if we get anything better. So what I tried to do here was, this is not a regressive LLM. So it looks at what it just generated to generate the next things, right? That's what auto-regressive means. So if you structure its output in a logically constructed way, right? That's this idea of chain of thought. Then sometimes you get better answers. So in this case, I'm starting with a question, and then I'm having it talk about the reasoning, and then it's giving me the answer, with the idea that it's going to think through a little bit about how it's reasoning and what context it's using before it constructs this answer. And maybe this will give me better answers. We shall see. Okay, it took 5 seconds. Let's see what we get. How can I install LLMs with a custom installation from pip? Medium, custom installation from pip section of documentation. The user needs to know how to perform a custom installation, which is explained in this section. You can install individual packages as needed using pip. For example, for a local setup with Ollama and Hugging Face embeddings, you would use the command pip. Okay, this is slightly better because it mentions Ollama in this instruction here. Ollama and Hugging Face, whereas before it just said Hugging Face, and then the Ollama part didn't make sense. Where can I find more information about using LLMs? Full guide to using the... All right, what does the actual documentation say here? A full guide to using and configuring LLMs is available here. Okay, that's a pretty broad. The user is looking for resources on how to use LLMs, which is a common need based on the provided context. What is the purpose of embedding models in this documentation? What is the purpose of embedding models in this documentation? I don't like the "in this documentation" piece. But it's not terrible. It's actually pretty cool. All right, so now I need a function to parse the response. we got? List. Nope. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. So first we'll strip the ticks. Or wait, we want to find what's between them, right? Let me look at that response again. Okay. Okay, let me think about this. Code block is the empty string. In code block, false. For line and string.split new line, if it starts with the triple tick, then you flip whatever the in code block Boolean is. Meaning if you were outside, you're now inside, and if you were inside, you're now outside. Okay. Else if in code block, else if, I feel like that should just be a separate if. Because if it was false as it starts out and now it's yes, you switch it to true. But you wouldn't want to add these lines. Okay, that actually looks good. Let's see here. Okay, validate the structure. For QA and QA pairs, okay. So we extract the JSON block, we load it, we parse it into a dictionary, and then we validate that all of the stuff is there. Let's see. Maybe it's this JSON. Okay. This is looking pretty good. Okay, so now we get an actual object here, not a string, that's parsed and has our questions. So maybe let me think about this. We have a few problems to solve. One is if I just randomly select a chunk, there's a pretty high probability it'll be garbage. It would be nice if I could filter those out. I also am curious if I take a chunk that I know is pretty good, like this one, how well does this work if I try to run it many times? So maybe just as an ad hoc test, I will try this, I don't know, 10 times. Oops. Now I should probably catch the JSON. Well, I should probably catch all of the accepts and just continue. Well, I guess I could just catch the value error. But in this case, I would like to see it fail, just so I could take a closer look. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, see how long it takes, and see if I get any errors. If not, then I'll have 30 questions about this one chunk. So it took 5 seconds, I think, to do it once. So hopefully it's less than a minute to do this 10 times. Wow, 49.9. That's a pretty accurate guess. Okay, let's look at the questions. How do I install individual packages for Llama? What are some resources I can use to learn about LLMs? What is the recommended installation method? Okay, I want to see if this... Oh, see, this is smarter as part of the larger installation command. So it doesn't include the extraneous ones we saw before. Okay, that's pretty cool. Where can I use a full guide to using and configuring LLMs? Whereas above it was, what was it? What are some resources I can use to learn about LLMs? So these are semantically equivalent, but different, right? They're not identical. A full guide to using and configuring LLMs is available here. And this is A full guide to using it. Oh, okay. Those are the exact same answers. Probably because it's copy paste from the text. What is this one? What is the name of one of the LLMs that you can use with Llama Index? Oh, Llama. Okay. That's pretty cool. I think there's one last thing I want to do before wrapping up this one, which is like a virtual judge. So I want to pass in the context and the question and the answer, and then ask the virtual judge, does the answer use the context to answer the question? And is there anything in the answer that's not provided in the context? Something like that. Given a query and context. Okay. What was this function called? Generate QA prompt. Generate judge prompt. I'm just going to put in a single QA pair. Okay, given this documentation, okay, so what do I want my judge to tell me? how about, I want to give it another JSON. Let's see. I'm going to copy this, but modify it heavily. Answer the following questions. And adhere not quite correctness. I don't like this question currently, so I'll come back to it, but I'm going to go with it for now. Hold on just 1 second. I apologize. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, which pair do I want to ask about? Okay, that one's boring. I would like to find something that's subtly wrong to see if the judge catches it. Let's see. I'm going to ask this one because I don't think this is that great of an answer. So what is it? 0, 1, 2. Oh, I appended instead of added. Okay, so this is the first, this is the second, the third. Okay, so I think it's this one. Results 3, 1. Nope. Yeah. Interesting. So it gives pretty high scores across the board: correctness, reliability, coherence. So let me see if I believe its explanation. The answer is mostly correct, as it names one of the LLMs that can be used with Llama Index. The thing I don't like about it is Llama is not an LLM, right? It's a framework. So let me see what it's looking at. For a local setup with Llama and Hugging Face embeddings, yeah, it's not very good for the reason I already said. And I don't know how I could change my virtual judge prompt to catch that without it being too specific. Maybe I'll add something like, okay. So again, I'm putting quality, summary, and concerns above correctness, reliability, and coherence because I want it to think through these things and provide answers before it gives the final scores. Because if it gave the final scores first, then it would give me this based on that being set in stone, right? So, for example, if it gave high scores to all of this stuff, then it would be more likely to not give me any concerns, to be consistent with its high scores. Whereas I would rather it give me the concerns and then use that to reduce the scores. It's subtle, but that sort of thing makes a difference. Okay, that only took 0.9 seconds. Interesting. Oh, no concerns. It's interesting it's still giving correctness a 4, but I can't get it to tell me anything bad. I'll have to think more about this. I think overall we have the pieces we need, though, which is we grab a chunk. Still need to figure out how to weed out pointless chunks. That'll probably be the next thing I work on. But you grab a chunk, assuming it has content in it, you generate questions and answers, and then you run it through this virtual judge. The idea is that for the ones that the virtual judge say are good, I will sanity check those manually and then add them to my sort of golden data set that I'll use to evaluate my system. And if I start finding things I disagree with, then hopefully there will be some consistent theme with like what it is that's bad, and that'll lead to ideas for how to fix it. And then once we get this ironed out, we'll have a data set for single chunk question answer pairs that we can then use to evaluate our retrieval and generation. And then we can take this same idea, but with multiple chunks, to generate a different data set, which will be like a step up in complexity, right? So it's like if you can't do it with one chunk, you're definitely not going to be able to do it with two chunks. When I say it, I mean grab two chunks of different context to answer a complicated question. So then we would have an interesting data set where it's like you have two chunks of context. Chunk one, let's say, is about, I don't know, installation stuff. And then chunk two is about some specific package implementation. And then maybe the question answer pair has you like install it like this and then use it like that kind of thing. And if we could get a bunch of those question answers, then we have a much harder test for our RAG system. And then that's the crank you can keep turning, right? It's like you come up with more and more ways of generating different types of questions, some that have, let's say, code. Let's see, somewhere I had We could also have questions related to features versus like implementation, right? It's like, do you support this versus how do I do that? And by tagging our question answer pairs with that kind of metadata, that'll give us a new lens or microscope that we can use to analyze our results. It's like, okay, if it's really good at answering direct questions about installation, but it's bad at like helping us troubleshoot, then that gives us something to look at, right? We can figure out why. Is it because it's bad at reasoning, or is it that our troubleshooting documentation is lacking, something like that? So hopefully this makes sense of the general approach and why this set of tools can be very powerful. Okay, that's it for me tonight. See you guys soon.